So today, we're diving into one of history's most fascinating and, frankly, most confusing figures, the 16th century physician Paracelsus. But we're not going in alone. We're going to be looking at him through the eyes of the great psychologist Carl Jung, who saw this guy as way more than just a historical footnote. For Jung, Paracelsus was a powerful symbol of a struggle that is still raging inside all of us today.
And that's the image Carl Jung leaves us with, a whirlwind. See, Paracelsus wasn't just some innovator. He was a pure force of nature. Think of an erupting volcano that just destroys the old order, but at the same time totally fertilizes the ground for whatever's coming next. Trying to pin this guy down, it's pretty much impossible. You either overestimate him or you underestimate him. So our goal today is to try and understand this enigma. To get a handle on the man, Jung says we have to look at the primal forces that actually forged him, and it's a story that's written in the stars, in the soil, and in the secrets of his own family.
Now, Jung's analysis kicks off somewhere that, might feel a little strange to our modern ears, his horoscope. Paracelsus was born in 1493 under Scorpio and the warlike planet Mars. And back then, this astrological signature was seen as his destiny. It was believed to have given him this fighting spirit, this quarrelsome nature that would literally define his entire life and career.
But it wasn't just the stars, it was the soil too. Paracelsus was born deep in a Swiss valley, just surrounded by these huge, menacing mountains. For Jung, this landscape was like a crucible. He believed the starkness of the rock, the chill of the water, all of it forged this unshakable character in Paracelsus, stubborn, dogged, and just intensely proud.
But maybe the biggest influence of all was psychological. You see, Paracelsus's father was the illegitimate son of a nobleman, a man who lived his whole life in this quiet resentment over the status he'd lost. And Jung had this incredible theory that nothing impacts a child more than the unlived life of their parent. In this view, Paracelsus becomes the avenger for his father. All his father's quiet resignation got transformed into his son's consuming, all-out ambition, a deep-seated drive to wage war against every single authority figure he met.
And you take that internal drive, that need to wage war, and what happens? Well, it just explodes into his professional life. He basically became a one-man revolution, launching an all-out assault against the entire medical establishment of his day.
His personal motto, it just says it all, doesn't it? Let him not be another's who can be his own. This is the anthem of a mind that absolutely refused to be controlled by any authority, whether it was a university, a classic textbook, or even a king. For Paracelsus, just submitting to someone else's idea was the ultimate sin.
But this is where things get really fascinating, because you hit this central paradox with Paracelsus. On one hand, you have the ultimate revolutionary. This is the guy who publicly burned classic medical textbooks. He lectured in common German, not fancy academic Latin, so everyone could understand. He completely scorned the traditional doctor's robe. And yet, on the other hand, he was deeply conservative. He clung fiercely to his Catholic faith, his belief in astrology, and the mystical wisdom of ancient alchemists. He tore down one whole tradition just to champion another one.
So, what in the world was the philosophy that could hold all these wild contradictions together? To even begin to understand his medicine, we have to first get our heads around his incredibly radical, holistic vision of the cosmos itself. Okay, so the big idea, the glue that held his entire worldview together, was this ancient concept, the link between the microcosm and the macrocosm. For Paracelsus, man, the human being, was a small universe, a perfect reflection of the great universe. And this wasn't some nice metaphor. For him, it was literal. He truly believed that the stars, the minerals, the elements of the cosmos, they all had direct counterparts inside the human body, all linked by this universal correspondence.
And this vision, it wasn't just an abstract idea. It basically turned the entire world into a living, breathing, divine pharmacy. A disease wasn't just a malfunction, it was an ens, a kind of natural being, like a plant or an animal. And for every single disease, he believed nature provided a specific cure, an arcanum, a secret remedy. The doctor's whole job was to learn how to read the signatures of nature, to match the external cure to the internal illness.
Okay, so with that worldview as his foundation, Paracelsus builds his whole medical practice on 4 key pillars of knowledge. This was a curriculum that went way beyond what any conventional doctor of his time was studying. And this curriculum was just totally revolutionary. First up, you've got philosophy, which for him meant the study of earth and water.
Second was astrology, which was all about understanding the heaven, the air and fire that existed within a person. Third, alchemy, the sacred art of preparing nature's secret remedies. But then there was the final pillar, and he argued this was the most important one of all, virtue, the physician's own moral character and their compassion for the patient.
And his take on astrology? It was especially radical. He believed a true physician had to navigate not one, but two heavens. There's the heaven above, right? The familiar cosmos of stars and planets we all see at night. But the really crucial one was the heaven below, the corpus sidereum, or starry body, an inner invisible firmament inside every single one of us, imprinted at the moment of birth like a unique celestial map.
I love this quote because it just perfectly shows how he saw these grand cosmic processes happening on a totally human scale. For him, digestion wasn't some mechanical process. No, it was an active internal alchemy. The stomach itself was the alchemist, transforming food into life. See? Right there, the microcosm of the body, perfectly mirroring the macrocosm of the universe.
So after all this, what are we supposed to make of this chaotic genius? Well, Jung saw him as something much more than just a historical figure. For Jung, he was a symbol of a fundamental struggle happening deep within Western consciousness.
All right, so here's Jung's final diagnosis, his big takeaway on Paracelsus. He was a man caught at a massive crossroads in history. His intellect was pulling him forward, toward the new empirical study of matter and science. But his soul, his heart, was still clinging to the old medieval world, a cosmos that was alive with spirit. So all this chaos, all his contradictions, in a way, it was all just a desperate fight to hold these two worlds together, to build a kind of science that didn't divorce nature from God. And you know, in the end, for all his wild mystical theories and his cosmic philosophies, this was his ultimate secret of healing. The physician's most powerful tool wasn't some chemical or some exotic plant, it was their own character. He insisted that real compassion and love formed the very foundation of the medical art, because as he said, the practice of medicine, it lies in the heart.
And that just leaves us with one last thought to chew on. For centuries, medicine went down a path that separated the mind from the body, spirit from matter, the very split that Paracelsus fought so hard against. But today, as science is finally starting to seriously investigate the psychic factor in illness, that profound connection between our inner state and our physical health, you really have to wonder, was this 16th century madman, this so-called wild ass of Einsiedeln, really just a relic of a superstitious past? Or was he, in fact, a prophet for a more integrated future we're only now starting to understand?